This video was made possible thanks to the generous support of our lovely patrons. You guys make our hearts melt. Hello everyone and welcome to another EDH gameplay video brought to you by Affinity for Commander. My name's Martin.
And my name is Alex.
Today we are getting in the mood for Valentine's Day by answering an age-old question. What makes a better two-headed giant team? A romance or a bromance? The idea for this game was brought to us by one of our fabulous Mythic tier patrons, Bobbit the Hobbit. Hopefully we do it justice. So without further ado, let's take a look at those opening hands. I am playing my Oloro Ageless Ascetic deck, which aims to gain a silly amount of life to keep us in the game. I keep an opening hand of COPPA Guildmage, Falcon Wrath Noble, Regal Bloodlord, Bant Panorama, Evolving Wilds, High Market, and a Plains.
I am playing my Kiddick Son of Yawgmoth deck, which will be using the life that Martin gains us as a resource to cast spells. My opening hand contains Wayfarer's Bauble, Knight's Whisper, Crypt of Agadine, and 4 snow-covered swamps.
Ren is playing his Phenax God of Deception deck, which uses creatures to mill out his opponents. His opening hand's made up of Kefnet the Mindful, Erebus God of the Dead, the Scarab God, Black Sun Zenith, Choked Estuary, Temple of the False God, and Underground River.
And finally, Calvin is playing his Sir Konrad the Grim deck, which takes advantage of the cards that Ren is milling by pinging his opponents for each creature that hits the graveyard. His starting hand consists of Blood Artist, Ayara First the Lochwain, Grind Clock, Bolas's Citadel, Dictate of Erebus, and 2 swamps.
Ren and Calvin win the die roll and decide to go first. Ren plays Choked Estuary and Calvin plays a fancy Theros swamp. They then pass to us.
Martin gains 2 life in our upkeep thanks to Oloro's ability, plays Evolving Wilds, and I play a snow-covered swamp. Next I cast Wayfarer's Bauble, and Martin sacrifices his land to put his swamp into play tapped. We then pass the turn.
Ren plays Dismal Backwater, gaining a life, and Calvin plays a shiny swamp. Calvin then casts Grind Clock, and the duo end their turn.
Martin gains 2 life in our upkeep, plays a Plains, and I play a Snowy Swamp. Martin then casts COPPA Guildmage, and we pass to Ren and Calvin. Calvin responds to this by tapping his clock, putting a charge counter on it, and then proceeds to his turn.
Ren plays Underground River and casts Kefnet the Mindful. Calvin misses his land drop and casts Blood Artist. The boys then pass the turn and Alex responds by sacrificing his bauble to put a snow-covered swamp into play. We then move to our turn.
Martin gains 2 life and then plays Esper Panorama, and I play yet another snow-covered swamp. Next Martin casts Pristine Talisman and I cast Burnished Heart. Moving to combat, Martin attacks Calvin with his Guildmage, dealing him 2 damage. We then end our turn and Calvin responds by putting another charge counter on his clock before the duo move to their turn.
Ren plays Temple of the False God as his land for turn, which can't tap for any mana at this point, and Calvin plays a swamp. Calvin then casts Araya, First of Lochwain, causing Alex and I to lose 1 life each, and Calvin to gain a life. Now that's some filthy two-headed giant rules abuse right there. With nothing more to do, Team Bromance passes the turn to us. I respond by tapping my talisman, gaining a life, and we then proceed to our turn.
Martin once again gains 2 life, then plays High Market, and I play another Chilly Swamp. Next Martin taps his talisman, gaining a life, and casts Alhalmaret's Archive. Such a great card in that deck. Taking advantage of the life Martin has gained us so far, I cast Knight's Whisper, drawing 2 cards and losing 2 life. We then pass the turn and Calvin responds by putting another charge counter on his Grind Clock before beginning his turn.
Ren plays a swamp and casts the Scarab God. Calvin also plays a swamp and casts Hedron Archive. Ren and Calvin then end their turn, and Alex responds by sacrificing Burnished Heart to search his library for 2 snow-covered swamps and puts them into play tapped. The heart dying triggers Blood Artist, losing me 1 life and gaining Calvin 1 life, and we then proceed to our turn.
Martin gains 4 life in our upkeep thanks to Oloro and Alhalmaret's Archive, and then plays Noir Isle Refuge, gaining a further 2 life. I play another Snowy Swamp, surprising no one, and Martin taps Pristine Talisman, gaining 2 more life. Next he casts Regal Bloodlord, and I follows up by paying 6 life and casting my commander, Kirik, son of Yawgmoth. Not yet finished, I pay 4 life and cast Gonti, Lord of Luxury, putting a +1/+1 counter on my commander and targeting Ren with Gonti's ETB. I exile one of the top 4 cards of his library for later use, and we move to our end step. Martin creates a 1/1 Black Bat token with flying thanks to his Bloodlord, and Calvin puts a 4th charge counter on his clock. We then pass to our opponents.
Ren casts Elixir of Immortality and then casts Murderous Cut, destroying Kirik. Calvin then plays a swamp and casts his commander, Sir Konrad the Grim. Alex and I lose a life, and Calvin gains a life as a result of Ayara's ability, and the 2 amigos pass the turn.
Martin gains 4 life in his upkeep, and then casts Rock's Faithmender. Because why double life gain effects when you can quadruple them? Martin then plays Bajuka Bog, exiling Ren's graveyard, and I cast Loxodon Warhammer. We then move to our end step where Martin makes another bat, and Calvin responds by activating Sir Konrad's ability. He then responds to this ability by activating his Grind Clock, targeting himself. Calvin mills 4 cards, putting 1 creature into his graveyard. Martin and I each lose a life, and everybody mills a card thanks to Sir Konrad's ability. No creatures are milled this way, and with the stack empty, we end our turn.
Calvin starts his turn by casting Bolas' Citadel, to which Alex responds by casting the Silumgar's command that he stole from Ren's deck. Alex chooses to counter the spell and gives Ayara -3/-3. The Elf Queen dies, Calvin drains Alex for 1 of Blood Artist, and Sir Konrad deals 1 damage to Alex and myself. Ren then plays Sunken Hollow, which enters tapped, and casts Erebos, God of the Dead. Yet another god I see. I respond by tapping my Talisman, gaining 4 life, and then sacrifice my Panorama to put a Plains into play tapped. The god then resolves, ending my life gaining shenanigans. Well, that's my deck shut off. Ren and Calvin then pass to us, and I make a bat token before we move to our turn.
I play a swamp, and Martin casts Falkenrath Noble, which, like all of Martin's deck, is significantly worse with Erebos in play. Next I cast Pontiff of Blight, followed by Grim Discovery, paying for my Pontiff's Extort ability. I don't gain any life thanks to that pesky Erebos, but Calvin and Ren both lose a life, so it's not all doom and gloom. I then return Burnished Heart and a swamp to my hand with the Discovery, play a swamp and move to combat. Martin attacks Ren with Regal Bloodlord and 3 bats, dealing him 5 damage, and we then end the turn. Calvin responds to this by activating his clock, once again targeting himself. He once again mills 0 creatures and then moves to his turn.
Ren starts his turn by casting Search for Cancer and then casts his commander, Phenax, God of Deception. Calvin then casts Tormod's Crypt, and the duo pass to us.
Martin casts Darksteel Ingot, and I play Cabal Stronghold. Who needs Cabal coppers anyway? I add 10 mana to my mana pool with the Stronghold and my Snowy land base, and use 9 of it to recast my commander. I use my remaining floating mana and tap a swamp to extort the spell twice, causing Calvin and Ren to each lose 2 life. But wait, there's more. I cast Burnished Heart, using Kirik's ability to pay 6 life instead of mana to pay for 3 extort abilities. Ren and Calvin each lose another 3 life, and I cast Pawn of Ulamog, paying 8 life for 4 extort triggers. Ren and Calvin lose another 4 life each, and we then move to combat. Martin once again attacks Ren with his Bloodlord and 3 bats, dealing him 5 damage, and we then pass the turn. Calvin responds by flashing in Dictative Erebos, and then activates Sir Konrad's ability. With the trigger on the stack, Calvin activates his Grind Clock, this time targeting Martin. Martin mills 0 creatures, adding to Calvin's streak of bad luck, and Sir Konrad's ability resolves. Calvin and Martin both mill a creature, causing Martin and I to each lose 2 life, and Ren joins in the milling fun by tapping his Scarab God with Phenax's ability. He targets Martin with the ability, causing him to mill 5 cards, 0 of which turn out to be creatures. Unlucky boys. With nothing more to do, Ren and Calvin move to their turn.
In his upkeep, Ren looks at the top card of his library and decides to keep it where it is. Calvin then casts Damnation, and Ren responds to the spell by milling me for 5 with the Scarab God. Calvin then responds to Ren's response by activating Grind Clock, milling me for a further 4. I mill no creatures from Grind Clock and 1 from the Scarab God, causing Alex and I to each take 1 damage. Not yet satisfied with the amount of cards I've milled this turn, Ren mills me for a further 7 with his commander. 2 creatures are put into the graveyard, and Sir Konrad deals another 2 damage to both Alex and myself. Still not finished, Ren activates the Scarab God's ability, exiling the Butcher of Malakir in my graveyard to make a 4/4 black zombie copy of it. Damnation then resolves, which triggers Sir Konrad 16 times, Blood Artist 16 times, and Falcon Wrath Noble 16 times. This results in Calvin taking 16 damage, Alex taking 32, and me taking 16, which lowers Alex and my life totals to negative values, knocking us out of the game. Well, that's it for this episode. We hope that you enjoyed seeing definitive evidence that bros before hoes is a rule to live by, at least as far as Magic is concerned. Remember that you can help to support the channel in 3 quick and easy ways: liking this video, subscribing, and leaving us a comment. I read every one. Also, be sure to check out our Twitter page and take a look at our Patreon page for snazzy rewards, such as official Affinity for Commander tokens. That's it for now, we'll see you next time.
Aya, first of the Lockworth? Lochthwain?
Lochthwain? Lochthwain?
Lochthwain.
Lochthwain.